Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to AP US History Online with Mr. E. Today we're going to be learning about the Civil War, our second part of our Period 5 review. Let's get started. Okay. So Civil War's topics 5.7 to 5.9 in the new curriculum for AP. So today's overview, we're going to go over the American Civil War. Primary source analysis will be the skill used, and we're going to think about why did the North win the Civil War, and what was the war about, right? There's a lot of debate over like what was actually the causes and effects, or what was the reason for the outbreak of the Civil War. Okay, Southerners have a different view than Northerners. At the end of the lesson, you should understand the chain of events that started the war, the reasons why the North won, how the war was waged by society and the economy of each side, and the goals of the war that changed over time, CCOT. As we recall in Period 4 and early Period 5, there's a growing anti-slavery movement that is started off with the Second Great Awakening, right? So we have the abolitionist movement. Books like Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe will kind of fuel the debate and intensify the debate over slavery, right? So that was an anti-slavery book that was a bestseller in the North. It was one of the bestsellers throughout the whole country. Not very popular in the South, though. So Kansas-Nebraska Act, guys. Kansas-Nebraska Act is going to cause some issues. It's going to allow, as we saw in the Compromise of 1850, right? Can I do a, oh yeah, okay, good. So, right, this was the Missouri Compromise in 1820. It said that this line, the 3630, is going to just, that's where slavery, you know, anything below it is going to be okay, right? Let's see if I can undo it. Nope, I can't, whatever. All right, and then the Compromise of 1850, they said, okay, look, in Utah Territory and the New Mexico Territory, bam, we can, we'll use popular sovereignty, right? We'll vote as to whether or not we have slavery, but there were like rigged elections back then, still are. And there was a lot of problems, guys, with voter fraud. Now, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, this little man from Illinois, Stephen Douglas, he came up with the senator. He was a senator that defeated Abraham Lincoln, and he said, "Hey, let's make it where, you know, with the Kansas-Nebraska Act over here in these territories, then we'll be able to see if popular sovereignty will decide the issue of slavery in Nebraska and Kansas." Because he wanted them to be organized as territories so he could make his little railroad track go from Illinois into that region, right? So he had a lot of money to make out of it. Money in politics. Nothing's changed. All right. Let's go to next. Okay. So because of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, there's a lot of conflict. Bleeding Kansas, violence breaking out between slavery, anti-slavery settlers, kind of foreshadowing the Civil War. The border ruffians, you know, there's something called Bleeding Kansas because of the violence that is occurring over the issue of slavery in the territory. We're going to have some psychos come into play, like in this picture, Southern chivalry argument. So the Brooks Summer Affair in the House of the Senate, or in the chambers of the Senate. A big fight broke out, and two dudes like went at each other and almost beat each other to death. Okay, and these are senators we're talking about. Now, this is what we really have to. I mean, yes, you could use that as outside evidence. Brooks Summer's affair. If there's your DBQs on the Civil War, if you talk about the build up to the lead or to the outbreak of the Civil War, leading up to the Civil War, Dred Scott. This decision, guys, huge. He's trying to fight for his freedom. What ends up happening is he said, when I was transported to the northern free states, I became a free man. But then the Supreme Court Justice Taney, why is there always, well, I guess I could use later pointer. Chief Justice Taney is going to rule that, well, he's an African slave, and so he has no rights, and he's just property. He can't make any arguments in court. Because they were trying to, Chief Justice Taney here, as you can see, looks kind of like a turtle. Not a good guy. Hugely controversial, horrible decision. Just saying that the Missouri Compromise is unconstitutional. Outlawing slavery anywhere is unconstitutional because it denies people of their right to property. And he was, I mean, obviously he's pro-slavery. He was like, well, slavery can be anywhere because that's what the Constitution is all about. So, yeah, he was a white supremacist, guys. Not good. Okay. Now, John Brown, he's on the other end. He's a psycho on the other side. Okay. He was extremist. He was one of the perpetrators for the Bleeding Kansas. Him and his sons hacked to death some slave owners with broadswords. He was super into the Bible, really took it too seriously, and he tried to do a raid at Harper's Ferry where him and his sons went and tried to take over the armory, and they did, but then Robert E. Lee and the army came, and then they killed his sons, and then they executed him because he got arrested. So there's a lot of violence, a lot of tension breaking out, guys. There's slavery rebellions outbreaking, such as we didn't get to see this in class, but we'll get to it later in the slide. Let's go over this. To summarize, causes of the Civil War. Okay, so these are the causes. Slavery, right? Huge cause, probably number one cause. Extending slavery, the federal-state balance of power, and just a moral issue. Just the question of Constitution of the Union, right? Do states have authority, ultimate authority, or does the federal government have ultimate authority? Just a lot of tension between the Democrats, the Republicans, the Free Soil Party. Different economies, right? Aristocratic South depended on plantation labor. The North doesn't need slavery labor because it has factories. We have extremism on both sides. Abolitionists and secessionists like Bully Brooks, who beat that guy up in the picture back there. He wanted to break away. The president was also horrible. James Buchanan. He was the president before Lincoln. He just didn't do anything to avoid the Civil War, guys. So sometimes bad leaders can lead to horrible problems. Okay, practice question from yesterday. What was the most important cause of the Civil War? I'll give you some time to think about that. Let's take 10 seconds. Starts with an S. Oh, and the answer is slavery. Slavery was the most important issue, guys. That's what really, drove politics, drove extremism, caused sectional tension. It's the issue of slavery, guys. Election of 1860. And some people in the South will be like, it's about states' rights. It's not about slavery. It was never about slavery. Slavery wasn't even a big deal. No, they say like, oh, it's Southern pride and states' rights. Well, it's not about, well, states' rights to what exactly? The states' rights to slavery. Okay. Election of 1860, this was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Now I think I have, oh God. Okay, good. We'll get to this in a sec. But it's going to be split up into 4 candidates, right? So that's going to be kind of weird. John Breckinridge, Stephen Douglas, Abraham Lincoln with the Republicans, the Free Soil platform. The Whigs, they kind of dissolved, and they had these new party. There are a lot of parties. Constitutional Union Party. So John Bell will be with them. So when you have more candidates, it can dilute and split up votes, guys. And what ended up happening, guys, was if we look here, well, Lincoln wins, right, by like by a big margin. But look at the popular vote. He only has under 2 million. Where if you combine the others, right, they're way more than 2 million. So like more than half the country didn't vote for Lincoln. And yet he won because of the Electoral College points, right, the Electoral College system. And also, like, if you combine these 3 dudes, like, if into one dude, they would have totally beaten Lincoln, right? 1.3 million, almost a million here. So, like, almost 3 million, right? Almost 3 million people, like 2.8 million, were against Lincoln. So he did not even have a close to a majority. And that's what got everyone mad. Because, you think in an election like, oh, the person with most votes or a majority of the votes wins, right? Lincoln didn't have a majority of the votes. He had the most electoral college points. That just shows how the electoral college system is super flawed. And yet we still use it today. And 5 times the losers have lost. Or, sorry, 5 times the losers have won. Where they don't have the popular vote. But they still win. Wow. Okay, chain of events. Lincoln wins. South Carolina is the crazy southern state. They secede. And then a bunch of 6 other states in the South follow suit, and they join up and make the Confederate States of America. The Confederates, right? Okay. So, within the southern states, there was some division, right? Different counties were like, dude, we shouldn't break away from the United States. That's bad. But as you can see, there's more yellow, and so the yellows have it, and they secede. Now, let's go over this passage, guys, because there is a debate over. So this is South Carolina. They're explaining why they seceded, right? Hey Google, 30 seconds on the clock. Hey Google, 30 seconds on the clock.
All right, 30 seconds. Starting now.
Hey Google, stop. What argument is being made in this passage? The national government has overstepped its authority. The union is based on an agreement of the states, right? States' rights. So states' rights, it's an issue. Like, who has more power, the states or the federal government? Here, South Carolina is saying, well, the federal government is overstepping its power, and we're going to break away because the states have all the power, or should have all the power. And they had caused the nullification crisis in 1832, because of the Tariff of Abominations. So, rears his ugly head again. All right, another 30. We're going to do Hippo. We're going to hip this document. Lincoln's inaugural address when he becomes president in March. And then they changed it to January, right? January 19th. Hey, Google, 30 seconds on the clock.
Okay, 30 seconds. Starting now.
Hey, Google, stop. Okay, so historical context, right? What's going on here? Election of 1860 and the secession that had happened in the winter before Lincoln even became president. The southern states were breaking away just because he had won as president. So Lincoln was trying to make a promise. He was like, my dudes, my guys, homeboys, I'm not going to end slavery, okay? I don't think I have the power to do that. I just don't want it to spread, right? I don't want it to like spread all over the country. I don't want the Civil War to happen, right, guys? Like, let's just work it out. Lincoln didn't want the Civil War to happen. He wanted the Union to be maintained, to be saved. And so he said, hey, I'm not going to end slavery, guys. You can keep your slavery. And he was trying to tell the southern states, right, the people who were worried about him ending slavery. He was trying to reassure them that everything was going to stay the same. Chain of events. So Fort Sumter is the first battle of the Civil War. So like, right, the southern states broke away, but then there were still like military forts from the north. And so the southern states were like, oh, well, we'll just take them over. And so they started firing on the fort. And then the north was like, dude, now the south's going crazy and they're shooting our own forts. Like, it's on, right? So because Lincoln responded with troops, more states seceded, right? Because they were like, oh, no, that's right. The federal government is being oppressive, right? So the Southerners are going to see themselves as like the American Revolution, right? They're breaking away from the evil empire, which is the North, the Union, and they're the good guys, right? In their viewpoint, right? So, ooh, this looks pretty awesome. Annihilation to Traitors. That sounds like a cool metal band or something. Hey, Google, 15 seconds on the clock.
Okay, 15 seconds. And that's starting now.
So take a look. It has the American flag. Wink, wink, hint, hint. Which side is it? Ew, look, rats and like snakes and ugly thing monsters are coming out of some of the. Hey Google, stop. So let's see. This is a pro-northern, pro-union perspective on secessionists. The southern states that broke away, the secessionist states, they are traitors, which they were, plain and simple. Yeah. Military aspects of the war. Okay, so now I know when we covered it in class, a lot of you were like, "Yeah, sir, let's go over the battles." This time we'll go over in more detail the battles, right? Okay, so despite this, at the beginning, the South is going to win, right? So key idea number one, despite early Southern momentum, the North eventually won the war for a variety of reasons. Idea number two, both North and South mobilized their whole society to wage war, and both face opposition on the home front. So the war is going to come to both sides, guys. The South's going to go to the North is going to go to the South. It's going to be in your face. There's no escaping this war. All right, so why did the North win? Well, contrary to popular belief or some misconceptions that students usually have, there were a few states in the North, in the U.S., that were still slave states, right? Like Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, which split up from Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. They had slaves. And Lincoln was chill, and he let them have slaves because he didn't want them to break away. He wanted this buffer region to separate the South from, being right up in our grill with Washington, D.C., being in Maryland and stuff. Because if Maryland went to the South, then like Washington, D.C. would have been taken over. And that's pretty bad for morale, right? So yeah, I think to lose Kentucky is nearly the same as to lose the whole game. Kentucky gone. We cannot hold Missouri, nor as I think Maryland. These are all against us, and the job on our hands is too large for us. We would as well consent to separation at once, including the surrender of this capital. So Lincoln was like, dudes, we cannot lose these border states. Okay, so when he makes the Emancipation Proclamation, he's going to say in all the rebellious states, there's no more slavery. All the slaves are free, to undo the fugitive slave law that was still in effect, right, from the Compromise of 1850. So when slaves would escape, we were kind of violating our own law in the North by not returning them to the South. So we did the Emancipation Proclamation to allow the slaves to remain free, except not in the states that were on our side, right, not the border states. Okay, let's look at the numbers, guys. It makes a lot of sense when you look at the data. Why the North won? Material advantages. So they have way more population, way more factories, way more resources, way more material. They even made more agriculture than the South, guys. We did what the South did even better. So the North, I mean, people might argue like, well, the South could have won if things, certain events would have happened differently. And you're like, dude, no. Now with these numbers, the South would have never won, guys, okay? Maybe if Lincoln would have lost the election of 1864 and then McClellan, the new president, would have made an agreement to end the war, maybe. But not militarily, not from a military standpoint, no. Okay, so why did the North win? We have, just look at the resources, guys. Railroad advantage. We have a network. This is like the cardiovascular system of the nation, right? And we have way better transportation to move troops, to move supplies. Oh, so given that, let's go over one argument that can be supported by the information on this map in terms of why the North had an advantage. 30 seconds on the clock. Hey, Google, 15 seconds on the clock.
Okay, 15 seconds. And that's starting now.
Oh, boy. Hey, Google. Hey, Google. Stop. Okay, so the West had stronger economic ties with the North and tended to support the Union. That's one argument, right? Like, we have access to the intercontinental railroad, right? Sorry, the transcontinental railroad. Transcontinental railroad to the west. California and the western territories were more connected to the Union in terms of trading and access to markets and the economy. But you could also just say, look, just logistically, being able to move supplies and move troops and get information is crucial to a war, guys. Establishing a supply line. If you cut supply lines, you're going to have a difficult, I mean, it doesn't matter how many troops you have if they have no bullets, they have no guns, they have no food or water, right? Why did the North win? Southern blockade. So, okay, so we have a huge, awesome strategy. It was part of the Anaconda Plan. The Anaconda Plan was to blockade the southern ports, ruin its trade, King Cotton, prevent the South from getting an ability to make money, right? They're not going to be able to export their cotton anymore if we're going to block anything coming in or out of their ports. And that was a tactic to it's kind of like a block, it's kind of like a siege, right? You surround an area, you prevent them from getting access to supplies, you cut their supply line, and so they cannot resupply, and they run out of food, and out of desperation, hopefully they surrender. Okay, they run out of money. How are they going to pay for anything? How are they going to buy more supplies? How are they going to buy more bullets? How are going to, all that stuff, guys? Why did the North win? They had like 2 times the people, guys. It's like 21 million to like 9 million in terms of population. And out of the 9 million of the people in the South, a third of them are going to be slaves. And they're not going to want to fight like, yeah, I'm a slave. I want to fight to keep slavery still. No, probably not going to happen, guys. And the only thing the Southerners had going for them, guys, was military leadership. Okay, and when you have a defensive war, just like we did in the American Revolution, it is easier strategically, militarily, to fight a defensive war. So that's the only thing they have going for them. Let's take a look. Anaconda Plan, blockading, guys. Let's cut all these. Let me get the pointer pen. So we got Charleston, Savannah, Jacksonville. We want to blockade all these port cities, guys. Okay, and they also want to take the Mississippi River to cut the South in half, right? And we are at the Battle of Vicksburg, we'll be victorious. So you block these port cities, and you have Galveston over here, and they're not going to be able to resupply or trade and whatnot. Okay, good. At first, the Confederates are going to win. And what was really crazy was people were like, this is weird. Civil War is only going to take like 4 months. And people would go like to have picnics and watch battles. They're like, this is so crazy. This is so silly. And it took 4 years of like insanely bloody battles all over the newspapers, just dead bodies. Really bad, guys. So we're fighting for America's soul here. Stonewall Jackson, great Southern general. He just was kicking a lot of butt. He won in the Battle of Bull Run. General Robert E. Lee, guys. Okay, he was a superstar in terms of military strategy. He really couldn't be beat, guys. He was just win after win after win. General Burns and the Union generals are really bad, guys. They'd always give up or like run away. So McClellan is going to lose to Lee. General Burnside is going to lose to Lee. General Hooker is going to lose to Stonewall Jackson. But then in a surprise twist, guys, someone forgot that friendly fire was on, and a Southern troop accidentally killed General Stonewall Jackson. He's like, wait, and then he shot it. Pretty horrible. So unfortunately, we got lucky there, the North. Civil War jokes. I General Lee don't find them funny. Okay, that was almost a dad joke. The Union turns the tide. So this man right here, boom, General Grant, guys. He'll become the president. He's on the $50 bill. Oh, he saved us, guys. He knew, like, okay, we have way more troops, so let's just stop giving up. Let's just keep sending troops and just Zerg rush them. Just rush, yeet and rush and keep going. And he had the nickname of being the Butcher because he didn't care how many people died. And it worked, guys. The Southerners ran out of bullets. They ran out of, you're going to run out of stuff anyway. And the Southerners didn't have as many supplies as the North. And they couldn't get resupplied because of the railroads. So Grant's starting to win, guys. A great win for Battle of Antietam. Finally, McClellan wins. And Battle of Vicksburg and Gettysburg are going to be huge victories. Vicksburg, we're going to get the access of the Mississippi River, which is huge. And cut off New Orleans. Great. Oh my gosh. Next. Okay. So the whole society in America is going to have to get into the war. They're going to have the draft in the North and in the South. They're going to have a lottery where, but in the North, you could pay for a substitute for $300. So if you're rich, you could be like, hey, poor homeless man, here's $300. Go fight for me instead. And that was also the case in the South. So kind of weird, and it's going to have some opposition, guys. So in the North, in New York, we have the draft riots. A lot of people are like, dude, why? That's against my freedom. I don't want to be drafted. People were like burning stuff down. A lot of Irish immigrants were a lot of insane things going on, guys. Okay, most of New York was like burning because they didn't want to join the Civil War. They were like, dude, I'm not gonna fight for what I just got here. I want to work. I don't care about like slavery. It's not my problem. All right. Now, in the South, there was opposition. Not everyone was like, yeah, let's fight. Like a lot of people were like, dude, I don't even have slaves or care about slavery. Why are we fighting this war, right? So it's in response, right? Like the South is going to have a huge problem with inflation. The economy is going to be bad. There's going to be skyrocketing inflation. When the economy is bad, people are going to get mad, guys. They're going to start protesting. Like, whoa, now we're fighting this war, and our economy sucks, and everything is bad. And why are we even doing this? I can't even feed my kids bread. So they were just like looting and burning stuff down. Really bad, guys. Sherman, he's one of the Union's best generals. He's under Ulysses S. Grant. He's going to be just taking care of business, guys. He was kind of a crazy guy. He was like, dude, let's just burn everything down. We've been playing nice for far too long. It is time, right? And he asked Grant, like, is it time? And Grant's like, yes, we've let them win enough. And so Sherman is just going to march to the sea, just burn everything down, blow up the railroads, just burn people's houses down, shoot the dog. Who cares? We're just going to make them like fear and give up and just be like, totally broken. And it worked, guys. He goes in Georgia. His campaign is unstoppable. And bam, he gets all the way to the sea in Savannah, burns Savannah down. And he destroys the Southern railroads. He destroys everything, right? Collateral damage doesn't matter. Burn their houses down. Burn the mansions down. It doesn't matter. If you're a civilian or if you're a soldier, it doesn't matter. Burn it down. So the Civil War, guys, is going to have more American deaths because, remember, everyone that died was American than all the other wars combined, right? Well, World War II, World War One. Vietnam War, kind of sad. Now we've reached a point where the death toll in America currently is more than the Vietnam War. So it's a sad time, guys. But it's not as bad as World War One or the World War II or the Civil War. So hey, gotta look at the bright side. So, okay, let's take a look at this question. How are we doing on time? Don't want this to be too long. Ooh, got some time. By profession. So like, yeah, what are their jobs, right? What are the jobs of the Southerners? What are the jobs of the Northerners? So more Southerners are farmers. More Northerners are skilled laborers, right? So it's going to be kind of a difference. Look, military, more than double of the Confederacy, right? So we got like, oh, this looks so ugly. 2 times the soldiers. And, a significant number more than... So, based on this, it's not A. It's D. Confederate armies lost a greater proportion of soldiers than the Union. Yeah, simple as that. Proportionately, right? So, like 500,000 in terms of, 1.2 mil, it's almost like, whoa, huge chunk, right? And so here, no, less of a proportion. Yeah, good. Okay. What is the profession of the soldiers in the war? So the Confederacy had more farmers than the Union. Good. Data in the tables more likely indicate which of the following. A looks good. B doesn't look good. C looks good. D does not look good. So it's either between A and C, and it's C. Yeah, we have more of a diverse population, more of a population to pick from, right? Because here it doesn't talk about like education, right? So throw A out, right? Okay. Part 3, government policies during the war. The goals of the war evolved from preserving the Union to ending slavery after the issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was smart to dissuade Europe from joining the Southern cause, right? So France and England, if they would have helped the South, it could have gone a different way, guys. But they didn't, and they weren't going to. American, like it wasn't. They didn't like really need their cotton that bad. African Americans aided in the war effort, and so yeah, Lincoln was like, dude, let's get African Americans to fight. They're gonna want to fight, obviously, and they're gonna do a great job. Questions regarding runaways, right? So remember the Fugitive Slave Act. Can we take the runaway slaves, or do we have to not violate our law and send them back to their slave masters in the South, right? Because Lincoln was like, oh, they didn't really break away. It's kind of like a person in denial, like we didn't break up. We're still together. We're just separated for now, but we're still together. We still love each other, right? So Lincoln was like, they're rebelling. So there's a couple laws that kind of settle this issue, right? Confiscation Act of 1861. It didn't free the slaves, but it just gave control of them to the Union, right? They're not gonna give them back to the Confederates, but it didn't. They were still slaves, right? Confiscation Act of a year later, so it did free the runaways who made it to the Union, and then Lincoln is gonna do the Emancipation Proclamation, which pretty much is the same thing, right? Frees the slaves in the South. Facts about the Emancipation Proclamation. Remember, and then the 13th Amendment will happen later, guys, because an amendment is way harder to change and get rid of than a law. So this is an executive order, right? Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln issues it as a military measure. And so you couldn't say, oh, it's unconstitutional, it denies the right to property or something like that. Because in times of crisis, military measures overrule that, right? So like right now there's a crisis, and you might say like, well, how can they have us stay in our houses and stay at home? Well, it's a crisis, guys. There's public health and lives are on the line. So in that instance, the government can tell you to stay home because to save other people's lives, right? It only freed slaves in areas still in rebellion, right? So not in the border states. So border states are exempt because he didn't want to get the border states angry, guys, and he didn't want them to leave to the South. And the North was like, oh, so what, right? So look at this guy. He's like, da da da. So Lincoln's inkwell is the devil. See? So yeah, I know it's kind of hard to make out, but see, look, the devil is where the ink is, right? And John Brown and Santo Domingo uprising paintings are in the back. Here's John Brown, may he rest in peace, and Santo Domingo in the Caribbean, right? Lincoln's foot rests on a bound copy of the Constitution, so he's like kind of keeping the Constitution closed. So the point of view of this author that is opposed to emancipation, right? So they're kind of making fun of Lincoln, like, what are you doing, dude? You're doing unconstitutional stuff. Like, what are you? You're obsessed with John Brown, who is a crazy person, and you're obsessed with these like crazy rebellions in the Caribbean. What is this guy? A nut job, right? The devil's making you write this stuff, right? So does that make sense now, guys? All right. Now this one looks way different, right? They're obviously pro-emancipation. Okay. Look at the area of emphasis. Okay, these poor slave families, beautiful families, they're free now. Look at the horrors. Okay, the slave owners whipping poor people, and now beautiful things are happening. This is wonderful. This is freedom, guys. This is America. Okay, and Abraham Lincoln looks like a nice guy. Like, so this is celebrating the positive changes that will result from emancipation. Okay, just the opposite point of view. Okay, now I let you do this one. Okay, those big hammer things are what they use to like break the backs of like pigs and stuff. Look at the rebellion. Look at that insanely ugly looking dog. That's Cujo. Cujo's down there. Okay, if you don't know who Cujo is, he's a crazy dog. Hey Google, 15 seconds on the clock.
Sure, 15 seconds. Starting now.
I might give you 15 more. Oh, okay. No, I'm not. Running out of time. You can't really see the words. They're a little... I'll read them for you. Hey Google, stop. Okay, so this artist is suggesting that the most effective way to defeat the South is by emancipating the slaves, right? So skill, strategy, draft, Emancipation Proclamation. Okay, so these are just the key points, right? This is Jefferson Davis, and this is the South, and they're going to break the back of the South, right? Breaking that backbone. We're going to recruit African soldiers. It's going to be crucial, guys. They're going to be like some of the most decorated and courageous soldiers in the Union Army, especially the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, all-black regiment. They won crucial victories, guys, because they were the most courageous. They were fighting for their, for a cause that resonated with them. So African Americans in Civil War battles, look at all these battles that African Americans are going to fight in, guys. Like, so many battles. Okay, so many lives were lost and sacrificed for the soul of America. Okay, let's take a look at this excerpt. I'm a little short on time. Okay, I have to start uploading. This is going to be in the exit ticket, guys. Frederick Douglass is a former slave, right? So just by knowing that, so the war is just not about the Union, right? It's about something more than that, okay? It's about freedom, okay? It's about liberty, patriotism. Okay, another question from this excerpt. What is Frederick Douglass' point of view? Okay, so that's we're doing the HIP on this, and we're doing POV. And it is C. Shared sacrifice would help advance African Americans men's claims to United States citizenship. So, if he's trying to speak to African Americans to join and to fight, so they can show their commitment, so they can get their citizenship there. Okay, another one. Promote which of the following, guys? It's not going to be D for sure. Probably not C. It's B. His advocacy for African American equal rights, right? Okay, let's get citizenship. Let's get equal rights. Well, not only will we be free, because freedom, I mean, it was already existed in the North, but let's get equal rights now, okay? Okay, Battle of Gettysburg, huge battle, guys. The Southerners came to the North, right? They came to the North. If this battle would have been lost by the North, Lincoln might have not been reelected in 1864. He would have lost to McClellan. So this battle was huge. A lot of it was at stake. So many people died on both sides at the Battle of Gettysburg. Lincoln, at the end of the battle, made the Gettysburg Address to just commemorate, the sacrifice that was made. So let's go over the Gettysburg Address. Okay, 7 years ago. I'm sure you've heard that before. And so the few months after the battle, which some consider a turning point of the war, so the purpose of the Gettysburg Address is he's dedicating a cemetery to those who died for fighting for freedom, right? So he's really propping up like the sacrifice and the importance of still fighting the war. A lot of people were getting tired of fighting, but Lincoln's like, we gotta fight it to the end, guys. We can't give up. We can't make a negotiation with the South. We have to have unconditional surrender. Okay. Here's more of the Gettysburg Address, guys. I had to memorize this in middle school. I don't remember it anymore. I mean, word per word. Okay, so purpose. So, right, we're just doing HIP on the Gettysburg Address, right? Purpose. He connects the idea that the war is testing whether democracy will survive. He refers to the end of slavery as a new birth of freedom, government of, by, and for the people. Okay, and this, the purpose is to just commemorate the sacrifice that was taken by these soldiers and the evidence connecting the founding ideas of American democracy. So that democracy will survive, right? That under this intense fighting, there is not a dissolution of union, right? That the government that works for the people will continue to survive. Okay, it won't be torn apart by violence. Key points to remember, guys. So, election of 1860 and led to the secession, started the Civil War. Union won the war despite early Confederate victories for a lot of reasons. First, it was just to preserve the Union, but then it shifted to end slavery. Lincoln defined the war against slavery as the fulfillment of American ideals of democracy, right? So, preserving the ideals that form the nation. Practice for tomorrow, guys. The first vote, explain the historical significance. We're going to go over Reconstruction tomorrow, okay? And we'll finish period 5 tomorrow. Very good. Oh, boy. Okay. 41 minutes, not bad.